You like thalassophobia? Ever thought about taking a dip out in international waters, looking down and feeling like a naked speck in the vast infinite darkness that may or may not contain indescribable observers of any possible size and level of malice? Well, let me put those irrational fears to rest, because there is something down there. It's an army of sharks led by bloodthirsty shark-farming aquamen, and they all think that you're trespassing. Meet the Sahuagin, is that right? Or the Sahuagin, or the Sahuagin. Even though that first way is the most correct way to say it, because it's the original pronunciation, I'm gonna team up with Mr. Mercer, because that's what I've heard the most.
Sahuagin.
These super mysterious and ravenous monsters have a surprisingly lengthy history in the world of Faerun and a whole buttload of enemies. It's honestly a surprise that they haven't been wiped out. They must reproduce like crazy. Through the run of early 5th edition, they were considered humanoids, but in all aspects of their nature, no the fuck they aren't. The 2024 rules corrected this mistake, assuring us that they are in fact fiends, given the fact that the very first release we see them in, they spewed out of melted ice caps, given life by wicked gods of chaos to combat the rival divine creation of the Tritons. But I personally like some of the newer lore a little bit better, so I'll jumble a tiny bit of it and explain it this way. So at some point in early history, there was this big-ass shark swimming around in the dark, bitter waters of the Great Sea, which is an icy infinite ocean expanding in the hellish land of Stygia. The titan shark, called Sokola, has a silly little legend where it fought and killed something equally as powerful as itself. I'm gonna guess that was a dolphin god, which honestly, good fucking riddance.
Dolphins! Yeah, they think they're so cute!
Its grumbles of joy over its victory opened a rift in the ice, and rising from this rift was a strange shell that began to spew out the Sahuagin. Still riding the high of all the blood probably filling its guts and gills, it decided, fuck yeah, little homies, and spread them all across the oceans and the plains. Hey, really quick, I gotta tell you about who made this video possible. Have you ever had a tough week before your next D&D or Daggerheart session and just didn't get the chance to prepare? Or maybe you might want to try your hand at DMing for your friends for the first time and don't know where to start. Then I'm gonna go ahead and recommend Ready, Set, Encounter. It's this awesome set of over 30 paintable miniatures, 10 modular battle maps that you can arrange yourself, and a book with all the stat blocks, story hooks, and cinematic scaling encounters to throw down at your next game night. This specific release involves a bunch of dragon cultists with kobolds and kobold lizard riders. I got the sample set in and I'm super excited to use it. There's a lot more maps than I realized. Here's my inflated cranium for scale on the dragon. Honestly, the value of a buttload of high quality miniatures is enough to sell me, and I can always use more maps and tokens. Click the link below, support their newest launch, and thanks to Everon for supporting me. Now back to the video. Regardless of their origin, their expansion and fiendish nature led them to directly clash with the Tritons, who are kind of like self-righteous, Chad-faced gun-toters in the ocean, and they were more than happy to meet this rising threat, so inevitably a war began that will probably never end, just below the waves of every ocean in Toril. In every edition of Dungeons & Dragons, it's really goddamn hard to write an underwater adventure, so not many people wrote too much about either species. Except for this big-ass, over 100-page book that I can't find a copy of called The Sea Devils. It describes an absolute buttload of their nature from way back in 2nd edition, but if I did find it, I wouldn't read it all the way through because this is just a quick run-through, the swim-through. Just know that down in the deep, there's a whole world of undersea dungeons, dragon turtles, and people who swim 5 feet off the ground through aquatic settlements, shopping for groceries and going on adventures and all that business. Sahuagin are incredibly adept at fighting in the ocean, probably due to some sort of aquatic arms race against the Tritons, and although they don't suffer any disadvantages when fighting above the water, they literally die if they stay dry for more than 4 hours. So if you sat them down to watch the extended edition of Return of the King, they would all die. For how savage and deadly they are, they have a super complex society and genuine settlements that they safeguard. There's a quote from that book that I didn't read, from a wereshark who is fucking awesome by the way, who essentially says that though they are merciless, bloodthirsty, borderline savages, if not absolute savages, who have almost nothing in common with surface dwellers in their more peaceful culture, that they shouldn't be underestimated or written off as simple monsters by any measure. It's pretty funny that a wereshark is probably the only outsider who could become buddy-buddy with these demons. Well, holy shit. That was Shark Boy. If I were to explore these guys in any interesting and approachable way, it would be similar to the plight of the fishmen in One Piece, where a large number of them that actually grace the surface are raiders, pirates, and man-eaters who plague trade ports and small settlements, which causes all surface dwellers to fear them outright. But in reality, most of them are confined to isolated settlements because of the reputation caused by a few outliers. And their war with Tritons could pertain to some ancient slight where ages ago a Sahuagin leader stole an ancient artifact or a princess or something from the Tritons, so now they're just locked in combat forever because of something that was either misunderstood or is easily repairable. Kinda makes me want a Dritz-de-Werden sea devil, like the only actual pure-hearted one in the whole culture just swimming around. Kinda like, I don't know, Jinbei from One Piece. He's a literal whale shark guy, like look at him, how can you not love him? Just like Jinbei, they have complete control over nearby sharks, and use them nearly every day like bloodthirsty cattle. They can also talk to sharks telepathically like Aquaman, but they can't do that with each other, which makes perfect sense. They ride these pet sharks into raids, use them to carry cargo, or keep them as simple pets. With the biodiversity of sharks, I'd like to see them with weirder or cuter ones like the cookie cutter shark or a fucking thresher shark. But pulling up with some great whites does make them a little scary to fight, especially since they share the same bloodlust that most sharks have, where they get advantage on all attack rolls made against a creature that has started bleeding.
That's good.
Going a little bit back to their fiendish nature, I find it interesting that they aren't mentioned in any of the Nine Hells or the Abyss. I think that potentially Sahuagin could infest the river Styx itself, or spew out of it whenever they die in the material plane. In that way, you could rule that there's a finite number of shark demons, which would explain their strong animosity toward the guys that keep killing them all the time. But in reality, I think shark people bang a lot. And sometimes they accidentally give birth to a baby that looks just like a Triton for some fucking reason. They call the baby ugly all of its life, but then the king or queen turns it into a spy that lives in Triton cities and gathers up Triton's secrets. They actually have numerous other birth flukes and mutations, almost like their genes are tainted with something abyssal, but they mostly just kill all the ugly babies. However, when one of them pops out with 4 arms, they hold it up like Simba and make them like kings. These dudes are called barons and grow like 3 times the size of the other Sahuagin. Honestly, beyond that, there's not a lot to say about them. I came back to this script like 4 times trying to figure out what's interesting about them, how to use them, where they would fit in any given adventure or setting, but they're kinda just evil swarms of Aquaman. I'm trying to remember who the guys were that Aquaman fought at the end of that awful movie, but all I remember is the explosions that kept happening mid-conversation underwater.